You're listening to The Bounding Box, where we talk about web development, geo development, and everything in between. All right, welcome to The Bounding Box. And today I'm joined by a special guest, David. Let me get it right. David Kerner?
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
David Kerner. So, David, please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, what's your problem.
Yes, hello, Rene. First of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. That's great. Thanks for that. And yes, I'm David. I'm a software developer. I'm working in the ArcGIS Maps SDK for JavaScript team, which is divided into these big sub-teams like the 2D team in Redlands and the 3D team in Zurich, in the R&D center in Zurich. And that's where I'm located. I'm working here. And so my work mostly revolves around 3D rendering and also like the tooling and analysis tools and also like the experience in general, like how things will be used in the API from the user perspective, from the developer perspective. So that's what I do most of the time. And what's related to my problem is that I actually come from a different industry, the visual effects industry. And so my journey then took me to GIS, and for me, it's very interesting and very exciting in my work here to basically figure out the GIS way of thinking and to see what might be worth bringing in from the computer graphics perspective. So I would say that my problem is like bringing modern computer graphics to GIS, and this does not only mean the rendering side, but also like the tooling and also like the mindset. Yeah.
That's cool. Now, I don't know if it's just Switzerland and the education system over there, but I've heard of a lot of developers out there are into computer graphics, or that's like it's what they studied in school or something like that. So I'm not sure if maybe that's the like very popular at universities out there, something like that. But is that the case?
I would say so. I don't have an overview of the universities in general, but I know that in Zurich, especially, we also have other like computer graphics companies, like or like with a lot of weight on computer graphics topics, like NVIDIA is here as well, and also I have been recommended so I was into computer graphics in general, and then I have been recommended to look at Esri, and I learned from Esri. I learned about Esri from back then when it was procedural. So and it appeared also to me that there's a lot of like computer graphics. Also, Disney research is here in Zurich, so there's a lot of it feels very computer graphics, and also like Facebook has a lot of stuff here computer graphics related. So yes, I would say it's true, from my perspective.
And I don't know if a lot of people know. I mean, it's kind of weird. Esri itself doesn't really talk about too much, but I know like if you go to SIGGRAPH, we have some devs out here that go to SIGGRAPH, stuff like that. It'll come up, but some Esri 3D software has been used in movies, right? Like I know
Absolutely, yeah.
what was it Big Hero
City
6 was
Engine.
one. Yeah, City Engine was
Hmm.
used, right? So
Hmm.
a lot of times in those animated movies, we see these large cityscapes, right?
Hmm.
That is Esri
Yes.
software being used to generate that. That's really cool.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually funny. So when I was working in London, I was working in one of these big visual effects houses, and we actually also evaluated City Engine back then. But it was, I remember Java only, and this was kind of a deal breaker because a lot of visual effects software is Linux based. Yeah, but it was yeah, seen and used in many places. Yeah.
How is it working with 3D on the web? Because I mean, you're pretty much using WebGL a lot, right?
Hmm.
You don't
Yes.
have a lot of low level C stuff you probably
Hmm.
would like to use, but you're really
Hmm.
pushing the limits of what you can do in a
So
browser, right?
So that's also an interesting aspect because I also, when I was younger, I was in the demo scene, and the demo scene is this kind of subculture where you would try to develop really compelling, like real-time, interactive, like not interactive, but real-time movies or short clips, basically. And the constraint was to only use 64 kilobytes. And so I actually embrace the idea of having a limited palette, to speak in artist terms, so to have to only be able to use certain tools that kind of sometimes heightens your work. So and I feel this is a bit also what's going on with WebGL. If you cannot use everything, you have to be creative, and that's cool, yeah, in a way.
That's neat. That's a lot of fun. And I mean,
Hmm.
there's a lot of changes going on in the browser with WebGL. Well, I guess WebGPU stuff now, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
attempts at using WebAssembly to do some stuff. And WebAssembly is great. Yeah, I've done some stuff. It's really nice. We have a little bit of it in the Maps SDK for JavaScript. It's just that those files can get very large if you're not careful, right? So we
Hmm.
haven't. I don't think we've really leveraged it too much for any rendering stuff at this point.
Hmm.
Correct?
Yes, that's, I mean, we actually leverage it at one point, which I'm really excited about, which I really love, is which is the voxel layer. So, as far as I
Ah,
understand, the pro team actually implemented the voxel layer rendering code and they have a WebAssembly target which they use in our API. And this was the first time we had another team basically bring in their code and use it in our API. And this is working really working really well. I love the voxel layer because also I have been working with volume rendering in the past a lot. So I really like
that's
to
cool.
see this, yes, being used. And it's interesting that you mentioned Web GPU because I feel these constraints, the WebGL constraints, these will go away. And I foresee kind of a convergence between web technology and desktop technology. Web GPU in particular, from the interface, is actually very appealing because it's a different form factor of these close to the metal APIs like Vulkan and in some way a bit simpler. So there have been talks about using WebGPU actually also for desktop applications because the interface is just a bit more nicer in certain ways. I found that interesting.
Yeah, I know like Yaron, he works on our 2D render. He's very excited about it. He won't shut up about it.
Hmm.
He's like just ready to go full steam ahead, everything. But yeah, it seems
Hmm.
like it's a really great technology coming up. Well, it's I
Yes.
guess we're using it now, and browser support is kind of coming along for everybody at this point, right? It's not. I think we're at
Yes.
100%, but it's coming.
Exactly. So Chrome is actually, it releases in May, actually, it releases 1.0 and in Chrome. And so this is going to be the first browser which will support it like fully for the clients. It's nice.
Now, how do you see developers leveraging 3D in their applications, like using the Maps SDK today? What are some cool things people are able to do with 3D?
Hmm. So I really like this question, and let me think about it for a second. Um, so I feel this question touches on the idea, or like this question of where can 3D add value? And and for this, it's interesting to think about, okay, what is the difference between 2D and 3D? And 2D is always a projection, right? So this means you lose a dimension, and and this has a lot of benefits in certain cases, like routing, where you don't need to know the height of the building. You just look from the top on the map, and then you have an easier understanding on where to go. And so the answer would be 3D is useful or can be leveraged wherever this additional dimension is basically provides a benefit or some additional usefulness to the application. And more specifically, you can make experience more immersive. So if you have as a realistic representation of the scene with the terrain as it is, 3D models of buildings as they are, and so on, and also not only about the geometry, but also like in terms of materials, reflections, and these things. This can add a lot of value to a scene just like that, to have this realistic representation of the scene. And there's many other ways, like for example, visualization of data. So we have 3D symbology, and this can be data driven. So you can have like your footprints, you can extrude them in height, and then use that to visualize a certain dimension in the data set or whatever. And yeah, there's a lot of other things as well, like the voxel layers I already mentioned.
Yeah.
Great way of visualizing scientific data sets and stuff. Yeah.
So I guess like the realistic scenes are really good for maybe planning folks, right? They want to see what new
Hmm.
buildings might go up, and they can even, like you said, they can switch out what those materials might be, how they could reflection of those materials. Like
Hmm.
if it's a building that's mostly some kind of glass or something like that, right? You get a pretty good idea of the reflection, which is also really cool in the API because we do have reflection from the
Hmm.
sunlight. You have shadows and everything like that, so you can actually see how those buildings are going to impact shadows throughout the day, right? You get,
Yes.
and what's cool is, and I always thought it was really neat, is you can actually pick a specific time and date for your scene, and you'll get a very good representation of what those shadows would look like, right?
Yes. And even further, another aspect of things where you can leverage 3D is the analysis tools. And here we have the Shadowcast widget, for example, where you can then you set the time and date, you get the correct like position of the sun, and then you can click in the scene and see, okay, how much shadow does a location or an area receive over the whole day, and this stuff like this. Yeah.
That's really nice. We would get stuff like that from when I worked county and stuff like that. We always had questions about, if we put up a new light pole at an old landfill that's on a hill, how many people are going to see it, or anything like that was done on the hills for these old landfills that need work to be done. Is that how's that going to impact the scene or the area from the surrounding neighborhoods, right? So those are definitely the
Yes.
kind of things you could do very quickly now in the 3D environment, which is really neat. And you can send that app out to everybody. Everyone that has decisions to make on it has input. Just send it to them. They could all view it. Everybody gets their input in. That's just a great way of working on it, which is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's also you can do some pretty cool other things with the scene. Like there's the edges, right? The like kind of sketchy edges on buildings
Yes.
you can do, right? Yeah. So you can also do some other non-realistic things that kind of add to maybe whatever it is the story you're trying to tell with a particular scene, right? Which is kind of cool.
Yeah, so I also find this is actually to me also like a quite important use case to use basically the data for representation. Like you want to make it look nice, you want to maybe have an illustrative feel to your scene when you present it as to some audience. So and these having things look nice, they seem not so important, or I understand from the things looking nice hasn't been important, but it's becoming more important as these data sets are shared and distributed and to different audiences. I think visual appeal is an important factor, I feel. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. 'Cause you can go from showing maybe like existing development is shown in realistic matter, but then new developments coming in could be shown in these non-realistic values, and people can have a really clear picture of what you're trying to do, what you're trying to tell them, right?
Yes.
And so like the analysis tools you were talking about too. I mean, from the like we have measurement tools like distance and area measurement. Does does it also include volumetric
No,
tools? Not yet.
no, not yet. But
Okay.
it's we are talking about it, and it's we know that people are asking for this. Yeah.
I think
There's also the line of sight tool, which
line of
is
sight's
handy.
great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As volumetric really cool because I know one of the things we would again when I'm an old county guy. We worked for local government. It was always like if we need to fill up a landfill because I worked on landfill. You fill up the landfill.
Yes.
How much dirt are we talking here? Give me a quick number. Then we just do the numbers by hand. Just figure it all out. But it'd be nice to just have a way to like select an area in the ground and fill it in, and you get a nice volumetric number back what you need to do. Those are always fun. But the distance measurement tools in 3D are really really cool. I don't think people really get how cool they are because you get these nice. It has a really nice UI. You get nice angles and everything on that. It's a great tool.
Yeah, this was funny when when we discussed like new tools and the visualization. I looked at Pro and I said, hey, the style line measurement tool, and we also did the same what Pro did. And then I learned that actually Pro liked the design and then took over. That's what is interesting. And also with the measurement tools, there's an interesting aspect which we have to discuss internally is how much do we convey like accuracy, right? So because if you measure things on the client in the web, you will only measure what has been loaded, like in terms of the terrain and stuff. And we try to load things as we need, but there's some compromises to be taken if not all data is available all the time. And so that's an interesting aspect which you have to think about.
And I think it's, with anyone working with data on the web like that, it's always that same question always comes up because a lot of times we have this people are the understand when you load the data, we load what we need to visualize everything. If you need an accurate measurement of like a window, how big is that window I'm looking at? Well, okay, you're not going to get a good measurement if you're zoomed out so you can see the whole side of a building. You zoom in a bit further, okay, now you get a way better measurement than you normally would have type of situation.
Yeah.
Right. So I think people just need to be aware of like what they're dealing with at particular times. But it's a good point.
Yeah, yeah.
Are there any cool new features coming to 3D you can talk about? We have the 427 release around the corner, and I think by the time this podcast comes out, 427 should be out. Anything
Mhm.
at 427 or coming up that you could talk about?
So I can talk about, for example, one of the bigger projects that has been mentioned also by one of your previous guests, because it's a big project across many teams, which is the scene layer editing. So that's going to be very cool that we are now doing more and more in the rounds of being able to not only visualize and look at the data, but also like go in and actually change it. And I think that's really cool because it opens up a lot of new possibilities and area or like space of things you can do. So more specifically, the scene layer currently is like this thing where you bring in the data, maybe in Pro, then you create this scene layer package and you publish it to get a scene layer, which is kind of this different data format. Internally, it uses our i3S representation, which is optimized for streaming and LOD levels and stuff like that. And you cannot really change it anymore because the data has been adjusted to be really performant for visualization. But now the plan is to allow users to actually click on items in this 3D object scene layer and move them around and change the position, not only the attributes, which is already possible, but also change the geometry. Being able to upload your own data sets and convert them, I think this is really, really cool. Yeah.
That's neat. And I've played with that before. I've gone to, there's a few sites you can go to. We can download these like where they get GLTF objects or something like,
Yes.
and you download them and you can upload them right into your
Mhm.
web app and your scenes and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So you can replace
Yeah.
your trees with like a giant duck or something like that, which is
Mhm.
kind of cool. It's just
Yeah.
kind of fun to mess around with. It's neat.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And then also like and then I think also like we are looking at, for example, bringing 3D base maps to the web, which is also cool. So being able to have out of the box 3D content anywhere on the globe.
That'd be neat.
That's super cool. Yeah.
That'd be nice to have some
And
3D specific base maps that people could use. That
mhm,
would be really cool.
yeah. And then our engine, like sub team, is also always working very hard to improve the graphics and the performance. So yeah, getting good terrain shading and also like being able, for example, if you don't move the camera, being able to use the idle resources on the CPU and the
That's
GPU
nice.
to produce a better frame and so that you can also get these cool graphics effects, not only if you have a high quality profile, but also if you have the CPU and GPU resources by not moving anything around or something. Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be useful because I know like if you're, we have the ability to add like weather, right, to a scene, so you
Hmm.
can have rain or snow or something like that. But if you're doing a lot of interactivity at the same time, then if
Hmm.
your machine's not up for it, it could a little stutter here
Yes.
and there. But if you leave it
Yeah.
alone, you should be fine. Like that's a really great thing you could do, and it's
Hmm.
fun too. It's fun to mess with the weather. I really enjoy that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as well, we have the water motion and everything now, so that's really nice.
Yeah.
The shimmer.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I also I always like to think also like long term. What can users expect long term? And this is of course very vague, but I feel that in the long term we will see and basically more of what we currently have, like these improvements in visual qualities. We get more editing capabilities, and I think there's a trend that we see more and more the web and the desktop applications to merge, and this will, I feel, trigger users and customers to ask for more capabilities on the web, which they know from desktop. And I know that one of your previous guests here has said that having ArcGIS Pro on the web is not a good idea or something. And I actually disagree. I would say having ArcGIS Pro on the web, like it is now on the desktop, definitely makes maybe not a lot of sense. But having like a lightweight version or like a different like form factor of ArcGIS Pro on the web, I can see that people may want to have that. Yeah.
That could be
So I
fun.
think
Yeah,
it's an
if it
interesting
could
perspective.
handle all the different like type of data loading and everything else that Proto
Yes.
can do, I think that
Yeah.
would definitely be a fun app to try out.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll
Yeah.
get something in that in the online, like if it's Map Viewer and Scene Viewer stuff in the future. They'll some
Hmm.
lightweight features out of all that. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'll call somebody.
And and also like one of my like kind of personal takes is that from the visual effects industry, I know that it's really powerful to have tools which are kind of designed in terms of basic building blocks which you combine. And so, for example, visual programming, like using node graphs to set up certain elements of your data, that's very popular. And I feel in the API, we currently have this more monolithic approach that you have one API, you can bring in data and stuff, but there's not so much this idea of having building blocks. And I feel this is going to change also a bit. I feel we may be going into a direction where we have more customizability on the API as well for developers.
Oh, awesome. All right, David. Well, I want to be appreciative of your time here, respect your time that you got available. But could you drop a couple of tips, tricks, maybe for listeners? Anything at all? Doesn't even have to be
Yeah.
3D geo related. Anything you want to let people know about?
Yeah. So let me think about it. This is a deep one. Yeah. So yeah, we didn't talk a lot about like more personal things, but this is a bit personal, I feel. So I think one of the main lessons I learned in life so far was don't compare yourself to others. I think it doesn't help. It's the recipe for misery. So I really like that idea that yeah, there's this illusion that everybody starts at the same place or at a similar place, but that's not true. I think everybody comes from, there's so much diversity. Everybody comes from a very different background, or like there's a lot of variety in where people are coming from and what they went through. So if you start comparing yourself, you don't see a lot of things, and that maybe your comparison is probably false or not useful.
That's a
Yeah. Another one would be don't take life too seriously. This touches on the first point where a lot of things are actually random, and by having so much randomness in your life, it's more like a game to me than actually like something serious. So yeah.
That's funny you say that because we just out of nowhere ended up with another dog last night because my wife's cousin just was like, "Hey,
Interesting.
I have another dog here if you guys want one." And we're like, "Well, sure, okay." So now we got a random, new dog we're taking care of over here and intertwining into the family and stuff. So just out of nowhere, you don't know what you're gonna expect. So that's great.
Cool. Yeah.
Those are great words of advice. Well, thank you, David. I really appreciate it. And I'll be seeing you next time.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Bounding Blocks today. Please subscribe for more content.